The stars shimmered like broken glass across the black sea of space. The UNS Valkyrie drifted silently into orbit above the Sci-Fi hive world, a living planet of gold and obsidian, pulsing with light and movement. Beneath its glowing clouds, vast hive structures rose like cathedrals of bone and crystal, humming with alien energy. Inside the sleek Earth cruiser, tension buzzed like static. "Are we sure this gift isn't offensive?" Lieutenant Ramos asked, watching the ceremonial crystal inside the polished black box. Superman didn't look up. His cape, an old Earth flag stitched with new stars, shifted slightly as he adjusted his collar. "It's symbolic. Unity, peace, blah blah diplomatic stuff. Everyone loves shiny rocks." Ramos muttered something about intergalactic faux pas, but Superman was already striding down the corridor. He didn't do anxiety, or at least he pretended he didn't. Today was the biggest first contact in Earth's history, and somehow he was the one chosen to represent the species. Not because he was the most trained, but because he was the only one who could survive a miscommunication. Superman was a living weapon, a super soldier built in the last Earth War. Now he was trying to be something new, something human. The shuttle docked at the Queen's landing spire with a hiss of pressure. Sci-Fi guards waited in perfect formation, tall, insectoid beings with Ketan armor and glowing eyes. Their blades shimmered with plasma. Their wings clicked like ticking clocks. Superman stepped forward, chest out, chin high, trying not to stare too long at the terrifying, regal figure before him. Queen Xal-Sura. She stood taller than all of them, cloaked in dark silk that moved like liquid. Her wings were folded behind her like a cape of daggers. Her face, though alien, held a strange elegance. Sharp mandibles curved like jewelry, and eyes that shimmered with galaxies. Superman took a breath and held out the gift. "Queen Xal-Sura," he said, voice firm but respectful. "On behalf of Earth and its people, I offer this crystal, a symbol of peace between our worlds." The Queen leaned forward. Her claws brushed the surface of the crystal. For a moment, all was still. Then she clicked her mandibles softly. Her voice rang out, deep and melodic, echoed by the translator pinned to Superman's collar. "I accept your proposal." Silence. A long, deafening silence. Behind him, Ramos dropped a datapad. Superman blinked. "Wait. Proposal." The Queen turned to her court and raised the crystal high. A thunderous cheer echoed through the hive. Drones screeched in celebration. Banners unfurled from the spire towers. She looked back at him, eyes glowing warmly. "You have honored me with the bondstone. According to the rites of the ancients, we are now united. You are my consort protector, and your species shall be forever allied with my throne." Superman stared at her. Then he stared at the glowing rock in his hand. His voice cracked slightly. Mom, I think there's been a tiny mistake." She tilted her head. "Do you reject this sacred bond?" The guards shifted. Ramos leaned in. "Sir, if you say no, that's technically an act of war." Superman looked from the Queen, to the guards, to the armada in orbit. He cleared his throat. "Well, when in Rome." He bowed, awkwardly. And the galaxy changed forever. Superman stood in the grand chamber of the Sci-Fi hive world, surrounded by towering walls made of dark obsidian and shimmering crystal. The chamber felt alive, pulsing with energy from the living planet beneath them, as though the very air vibrated with power. Drones fluttered in the shadows, attending to the Queen's every need with eerie precision. Queen Xal-Sura sat on a throne of bone and crystal, her long antennae twitching slightly as she studied him with those glowing, multifaceted eyes. Her wings unfurled, folding around her like a veil of sharp, iridescent blades. She was every bit the intimidating, regal creature the Earth diplomats had warned him about. Superman swallowed, trying not to look too nervous. He was the consort protector of the Sci-Fi Queen now, and somehow he was still struggling to understand what that even meant. A marriage. they called it. But it felt more like he'd accidentally signed up for an intergalactic political hostage situation. The throne room was quiet. Too quiet. I trust Earth's traditions include the ceremonial union. Queen Salsora's voice rang out, cutting through the silence. It was smooth, regal, and far too calm for Superman's taste. He began, looking back at the diplomats who'd accompanied him. Lieutenant Ramos was visibly sweating, standing stiff as a board. Superman's lips twitched with an awkward smile. Right. Ceremonial. Just, a symbolic thing. The Queen tilted her head, as if studying his every word. The bombstone is no mere trinket, human. It binds us together, not just in title, but in essence. Your acceptance of it means the merging of our peoples. Superman blinked, still processing the words. He hadn't realized that marriage in sci-fi terms didn't just mean sharing a home or a bed. It was a political declaration, a binding, a ruling. Wait a second, he said, the idea clicking in his mind. You mean to tell me this wasn't just a misunderstanding? I didn't just offer you a rock. I've just been wedded to you. The Queen's mandibles clicked once, a sound that could have been a laugh or a threat. You misunderstand nothing, consort. Your gift was accepted. And as our people's fates are intertwined, so too must your destiny be. You are now the defender of my throne, the protector of the hive. Superman's stomach dropped. Protector of the hive. Yes. She rose from her throne, her wings spreading wide, casting a shadow over him. My enemies would destroy everything I've built. Your presence here will ensure their failure. You shall stand at my side, human, as both my equal and my guardian. A sharp chill ran down his spine, but he couldn't look away from her. There was something deeply compelling about the way she stood, the absolute confidence in her power. And now, apparently, he was a part of that. Okay, Superman said, rubbing the back of his neck. I think I got it. But just so we're clear, I'm not exactly intimate with the idea of ruling an empire. I mean, I didn't even want to be the king of Earth half the time. The Queen's eyes softened slightly, though the weight of her stare didn't lessen. This is no rule of mere kingdoms, human. This is the preservation of an empire. My empire. And your species, if you truly wish, will share in its glory or its collapse. Her words were heavy, thick with the weight of generations, and as she spoke, he realized that the stakes had grown beyond personal discomfort. This wasn't just about his awkward blunder anymore. This was the future of Earth itself. You'll need to prepare, Exal Sarah said, stepping closer. The Seraphim do not bend for outsiders. To earn the loyalty of my people, you must endure trials. Combat trials, diplomatic trials, mental trials. Superman nodded, fighting the rising panic inside. He had spent his life fighting wars on Earth, stopping supervillains, saving cities. But this was a different kind of battlefield, one that wasn't won with fists alone. I'll do whatever it takes, Superman said, meeting her eyes. I'll protect you, and I'll protect Earth. But you've got to understand, this wasn't my plan. The Queen's mandibles clicked again, this time with a sense of approval. We never plan our fates, human. We merely accept them. Her words hung in the air like a dark promise. Superman could already feel the weight of his new role crushing down on him. Earth's fate, and possibly the fate of the entire galaxy, now lay in the hands of one very confused, but determined super soldier. And somewhere deep inside him, a spark of defiance ignited. If anyone could handle this insane new reality, it was him. After all, humanity had always thrived in chaos. He had a new mission now, one that started with keeping an alien empire from falling apart, and one that might just end with saving it. The battle raged in the cold depths of space. The Valkyrie shuddered as another pulse of enemy fire struck its shields. Superman stood at the command center, staring out at the massive Sci-Fi fleet forming up around them. His mind raced with 1,000 questions, But one thought pierced through everything. How did it come to this? Just days ago, he'd been at a peace summit, shaking hands, giving speeches, and trying not to screw things up too badly. Now he was facing a full-scale assault from a rival warlord. Vex Thor, the self-proclaimed blood prince of the sci-fi underworld, who wanted the throne for himself. The Queen's enemies were mobilizing, and Earth was suddenly right in the crossfire. Superman! Queen Salsara's voice crackled through his earpiece, her tone sharp but controlled. The enemy fleet is flanking us from the dark side of the moon. We need you to lead the counterstrike. Superman's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene unfolding on the holomap. The enemy ships, sleek, jagged, and deadly, were closing in fast. He had no experience commanding fleets, but that wasn't what they were asking of him. No, his strength wasn't in tactics. It was in doing. Understood, Superman replied, his voice steady, despite the rising tension. With a thought, he activated the suit's propulsion systems and shot out from the Valkyrie, rocketing into the vast emptiness of space. The cool silence of the void surrounded him as he soared toward the enemy formation, his fists clenched, ready for what came next. Suddenly, enemy fire lanced through the dark, streaking toward him. He twisted in midair, evading the shots with a fluid motion, the force of each near miss pushing his body further into the void. The weapons of the sci-fi might be powerful, but they weren't built to fight a human who could move faster than the speed of sound. In a single burst of energy, Superman slammed into the first enemy ship, his fists pounding against the hull with the force of 100 meteors. The ship crumpled, a ball of sparks and twisting metal, as Superman surged forward, a blur of movement. He was a living weapon, designed to take down armies. And now, for the first time, he was going to make it count. Around him, the battle intensified. The Valkyrie unleashed its own volleys of fire. And the sci-fi ships, though outgunned, fought with a desperation that made them dangerous. Vex Thor's forces were ruthless, attacking without mercy. But Superman wasn't here for mercy. He dived into another wave of enemy ships, dodging blasts as he punched his way through, each hit sending shockwaves through space. He wasn't just fighting for Earth now. He was fighting for the sci-fi, for Salsara, and for the fragile peace they had forged. Each strike was a message, one that would resonate far beyond this battle. As he moved, he saw the Queen's flagship at the center of the skirmish, surrounded by a ring of defensive ships. Salsara's ship was a massive, glowing leviathan in space, its surface crackling with energy shields. But even she wasn't immune to the barrage of enemy fire. "Hold strong, my queen," Superman muttered under his breath as he shot through the darkness, towards her ship. With a grunt, he propelled himself into the thick of the fight, a comet of vengeance crashing into enemy lines. He collided with another ship, twisting its armored plating into useless metal. Then, like a force of nature, he shot toward the Queen's flagship, his muscles straining with the effort. The ship loomed ahead, its surface swarming with enemy drones. Superman tore through them, one punch after another, sending them careening into space. Each move was instinctive, the years of training and combat now a part of him, guiding his every action. But it wasn't enough. The Valkyrie needed him back at its helm. The sci-fi fleet wasn't going to last much longer without their leader. With one final blast, Superman soared toward the heart of the battlefield. His arrival at the Queen's side was a signal to her forces. Earth's protector had arrived. The tides of battle began to shift. Queen Salsara's voice echoed in his earpiece, filled with quiet respect. "You've done well, human, but this fight is far from over." Superman, his chest heaving with exertion, glanced at her ship, seeing the damage they'd sustained. "Yeah," he said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of 1,000 battles. "But it's only just begun." The air in the ancient cavern was thick with a strange, humming energy, as if the very walls of the sci-fi hive were alive with their own heartbeat. Superman stood at the entrance, staring down into the depths of the cavern where the Hiveheart trials were about to begin. The Queen had insisted. No Earth diplomat would be allowed to bond with the sci-fi without proving themselves worthy. And now Superman had to face what could very well be the most dangerous trial of his life. Trials that would push his mind, body, and soul to their breaking points. "You ready for this?" Lieutenant Ramos asked, his voice tight through the comlink. Superman didn't respond immediately. He was scanning the room. Tall, jagged stalagmites rising from the floor like teeth, and the air heavy with the scent of something sweet and sharp. It was quiet, except for the soft buzzing of the sci-fi drones surrounding him. Sarah appeared from the shadows, her wings rustling softly as she walked toward him. Her presence was as commanding as ever, her eyes glowing with an unreadable expression. She had been watching him since the beginning, evaluating him as both a warrior and a diplomat. Now she was ready to see if he was worthy of her empire. "This is the first trial," she said, her voice carrying through the cavern. "The trial of strength. You must face the Karthak, the last of the ancient beasts that once roamed our world." Superman raised an eyebrow, glancing over at the dark recesses of the cavern. He could already sense the presence of something large, something powerful, moving just out of sight. The ground trembled, the sound of massive claws scraping across stone. A deep growl echoed through the cavern, and then, from the shadows, emerged the Karthak. It was a towering, multi-legged creature, covered in armored scales that glimmered in the dim light. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth that seemed sharp enough to slice through steel. It was a beast born for war, with the strength of an entire army. Superman felt his heart rate spike, but his calm determination kept his body still. The sci-fi were watching, waiting. This was his moment to show them that humanity was more than just a weak species. They needed to understand that he wasn't just the product of war, he was the protector of life, and no creature was going to take that away from him. The Karthak lunged at him with a speed that caught him off guard. Its claws slashed through the air like a storm of razors. Superman barely dodged, feeling the rush of wind as the beast's claws scraped across his suit, leaving deep gouges. He wasn't invulnerable, not to everything, but he could take a hit. He retaliated with a blast of speed, diving into the creature's side with a powerful punch. The Karthak roared in pain, rearing back, but it was far from finished. The creature's tail whipped around like a battering ram, crashing into Superman's chest and sending him flying across the cavern. He landed hard on the stone floor, the breath knocked out of him. His muscles burned, his head spun, but he pushed himself back to his feet. There was no time for weakness. The sci-fi were watching, and if he faltered now, they would never accept him as their protector. The Karthak charged again, but this time, Superman was ready. He sidestepped at the last moment, grabbing the creature's massive tail and using its own momentum to throw it into the stone wall with a loud crash. The beast staggered, disoriented. Superman moved fast, landing a series of blows to its side, each one powered by his superhuman strength. Finally, with one last punch that sent a shockwave through the cavern, the Karthak collapsed, its body lying motionless on the ground. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the sci-fi drones broke into a low murmur. Superman stood, chest heaving with exertion. As the Queen stepped forward, her eyes narrowed in approval. "You have proven yourself strong, human," Sarah said. "But strength is only one part of the trials. The next is your mind." Superman wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. The Queen wasn't done testing him, not by a long shot. With a glance at the defeated beast, he nodded. "I'm ready." The Queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. "We shall see." As the next challenge began to unfold, Superman could feel the pressure mounting. The Hiveheart trials weren't just tests of strength. They were tests of everything he was. And if he failed, the sci-fi would never accept him as their protector, and Earth's future might very well be at stake. The chamber was silent, a vast, dimly lit hall that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. Superman stood at its center, feeling the weight of the trial settling on his shoulders. Unlike the physical battle with the Karthak, this trial was different. It was an assault on his mind, his thoughts, his very sense of reality. Queen Salsara's voice echoed from the shadows. This is the trial of the mind, human. You will face your deepest fears, your greatest doubts. If you cannot overcome them, you will never truly earn the right to stand as protector of the hive. Superman's heart thudded in his chest. The weight of her words pressed against him. His powers had always been his strength, his physical might, his speed, his durability. But his mind, that was a different matter entirely. His thoughts had always been his weakness, the part of him he struggled to control, especially now, in a world that was so foreign to him. The floor beneath him shimmered, and in an instant, the chamber transformed. The stone walls dissolved into nothingness, replaced by an eerie, endless horizon of broken cities. The ground beneath his boots was cracked and lifeless, buildings reduced to smoldering ruins. It was a place he knew all too well, the ruins of Earth after the Great War. Superman's breath hitched. This was no illusion. This was a memory, one he'd locked away, one he had tried so hard to forget. The war, the destruction, the loss of everything he had ever known. He clenched his fists, willing the memory to fade, but it wouldn't. The sky above him darkened, swirling with the same black clouds that had consumed the world during those final days of battle. He could hear the screams of the fallen, the cries of a planet on the brink of extinction. Are you ready to face what you fear most? Salsara's voice rang out, colder than before. Superman turned, his eyes scanning the devastated cityscape. In the distance, a figure emerged from the shadows. An all-too-familiar figure. It was Lois. But she wasn't the Lois he knew. She was kneeling on the cracked pavement, her eyes hollow, her face gaunt and pale. "Help me," she whispered, her voice strained, as if pleading from the depths of a nightmare. "You should have saved us. You should have stopped it." Superman's chest tightened. He stepped forward, but the ground cracked beneath him, swallowing him into the depths of the city. He reached out for Lois, but no matter how fast he moved, she always stayed just out of reach. "You're too late," the haunting voice of the illusion echoed, morphing into the sound of every lost soul he had failed to save. "You couldn't protect them. You can't protect anyone." His heart was pounding in his ears. Doubt, the gnawing fear that had always haunted him, threatened to swallow him whole. He had failed them. He had been too late. The destruction of his world, the death of so many. He couldn't undo it. But then, through the storm of guilt and pain, a thought pierced through. This isn't real. He stopped, breathing hard. His eyes closed, and he focused on the feeling. The unshakable truth that he had learned in the deepest parts of his soul. The past could not be changed. He couldn't save everyone, but he could protect now. He had this moment, and this moment was where his power could make a difference. Superman opened his eyes, and the illusion around him began to crack. The city, the clouds, the shattered memories, they all began to dissolve into nothingness. The illusion couldn't hold against his resolve. He wasn't the same person who had been overwhelmed by guilt. He was stronger now. "No," he muttered to himself. "I've learned. I'm not the man I was. I protect the future, the present." The image of Lois faded, replaced by a clear sky. The ruins were gone, and in their place stood the quiet, bright expanse of a peaceful world, one he was fighting to protect. The voice of Salsara echoed once more, this time with a hint of approval. "You have passed the trial of the mind, human. You have proven that you can face your past and still move forward." Superman exhaled, his heart still racing but his mind clear. He wasn't sure how long he had stood in that vision, or how close he had come to breaking. But now he knew he was ready. He could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Queen's shadowy figure appeared before him, her eyes watching him with a newfound respect. "You have passed, but the final trial awaits. Prepare yourself, protector. He nodded, standing tall once again. The trials had only just begun, but now, with his mind clear and his resolve stronger than ever, Superman was ready to face whatever the hive world had in store. The vast chamber of the hive heart pulsed with a strange, almost living rhythm, a beating presence beneath Superman's feet. This was it, the final trial, the last step before he could truly claim his place by Queen Xal'Sura's side. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air, his senses tingling with anticipation, and the hum of ancient energy surrounding him. Superman had already passed the physical trial, the mental trial, and even faced the darkness of his past. But now he would face something entirely different, something that would push him beyond his own understanding. Xal'Sura stood at the entrance to the chamber, her wings folded, her antennae still. Her eyes, glowing with an ancient power, never left him as she spoke, her voice resonating in the deep cavern. The final trial is not one of strength or will, human, she said, her tone grave, yet oddly gentle. It is one of the heart. Superman furrowed his brow, confused. The heart. You must prove that you are worthy not just to stand beside me, but to stand with my people, she continued, her wings shifting slightly as if preparing to take flight. Your bond with the hive is not merely ceremonial. It is a union of purpose and destiny. If you cannot understand that, if you cannot truly connect with us, you will fail. Superman exhaled slowly. He had faced gods, aliens, and entire armies before, but this was something different. The weight of the responsibility settled in his chest, heavier than any burden he had ever carried. What do I need to do? He asked, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. Xal'Sura nodded, as if she had anticipated the question. Come, she beckoned, stepping into the glowing heart of the hive. You must enter the core. There you will face what lies at the very center of our existence, the truth that binds the scifi to our world. Superman followed her through the dark passageways, the air growing warmer with each step. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, as if alive. Finally, they reached the heart of the hive. The core. It was an enormous crystalline structure that shimmered with energy, casting a soft glow across the chamber. At the center of the core was a pulsing light, like a star contained in a delicate web of veins. This is the hive heart, Xal'Sura explained, stepping toward it. It is the source of our strength, our unity. It is what keeps us together, binds our people to this world. But it is also the place where you must confront what you are willing to sacrifice for the greater good. Superman stepped closer, his heart racing. The light seemed to draw him in, its warmth washing over him like a wave of power. But as he reached out, something strange happened. The world around him flickered, and suddenly, he was no longer standing in the hive. Instead, he was standing in the middle of a devastated battlefield, Earth's final moments. The echoes of war surrounded him. The sky was blackened with smoke, and the ground was littered with the bodies of both heroes and villains. The screams of the dying reverberated in his ears. You could have stopped this, a voice whispered from the shadows. Superman's breath caught as he turned to see a familiar face, Lois. But this was not the Lois he knew. This was the Lois who had died in the war, the Lois who had never been saved. You failed, she said, her voice soft, but filled with accusation. You could have saved everyone, but you didn't. You were too busy fighting them. Superman clenched his fists, his heart sinking. The weight of the war, of every life he couldn't save, crushed him. He had been too late. He had failed her, failed them all. No, he whispered, shaking his head. I did my best. But the illusion persisted, the battlefield stretching endlessly, mocking him. Your best wasn't enough. Lois's voice echoed. You always think you can fix everything, but you can't. Sometimes the cost is too high. He fell to his knees, the crushing reality of his failure closing in around him. But as the darkness seemed ready to consume him, another thought broke through. a small spark of clarity. "No, I don't give up. Not now. Not ever." With a deep breath, he stood, his vision sharpening, his mind clearing. He understood now. The Hive's heart wasn't just about victory. It was about accepting loss and continuing forward. Sacrifice was a part of leadership, of protecting those you loved. But you had to keep going, even when the world seemed lost. The battlefield vanished, replaced once more by the shimmering light of the Hive's core. Kazal stood before him, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "You have faced the heart of the Hive," she said, her voice a whisper of approval. "You understand now. It is not about perfection. It is about the willingness to fight, to sacrifice, to lead, no matter the cost." Superman exhaled deeply, the weight of the trial lifting from his shoulders. The silence that followed the completion of the final trial stretched long, almost unnerving in its stillness. Superman stood beside Queen Kazal, now more than just a visitor in the Sci-Fi Empire. His trials had been arduous, but he had passed each one, not just with strength, but with understanding, compassion, and resolve. He was no longer just the Earth's protector. He was now intertwined with the fate of the Sci-Fi as well. Yet, as the calm of the Hive world enveloped him, a storm was quietly gathering at its edges. Kazal led him through the glittering hallways of the Hive citadel, her wings making barely a sound as they moved. The hum of Sci-Fi technology thrummed in the walls, an ever-present reminder of their power. Their civilization, ancient and far-reaching, was now his responsibility too, and the weight of that settled in Superman's chest. "You've done well, human," Kazal said, her voice steady, though there was an unreadable edge to it. "But the peace we've built is fragile, and there are those among my people who do not see your presence as a blessing, but a threat." Superman turned his gaze toward her, his brow furrowed. "You mean a rebellion?" Kazal nodded, her wings twitching slightly. "Yes, some believe that our future lies solely within the Hive's traditions, untouched by outside influence. They see your rise as a corruption of our ancient ways. They will not accept you." The words stung, even if he expected them. He had been in this position before. Whether it was Krypton, Earth, or now the Sci-Fi, change always brought resistance. But this time, it wasn't just about him. It was about the future of an entire species. "Then they'll have to be stopped," Superman said, his voice firm, determination rippling through him. "We can't let old grudges destroy everything we fought for." The Queen's gaze softened just for a moment. "Your strength is undeniable. But this rebellion is not only a matter of strength, it is a matter of hearts and minds. And they will test you as much as any battle you fought." As they neared the central command room of the Hive Citadel, the doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, several Sci-Fi commanders stood gathered around a holographic map, their faces grim. Superman could sense the tension in the room before anyone spoke. Queen Kazal, protector of the Hive, one of the commanders, a sharp-faced Sci-Fi with bright blue wings, greeted them with a nod. "The rebellion is growing. It is only a matter of time before they strike." Kazal turned to Superman, her eyes narrowing. "There is no choice now. We must act. Prepare yourself." Superman nodded, stepping forward. His mind raced with possibilities, but one thing was clear. He couldn't do this alone. The Sci-Fi were a powerful species, but their unity had already been fractured by division. To protect them, he would have to unite them, something that no amount of physical power alone could accomplish. As the room began to pulse with activity, plans being drawn, resources mobilized, a sharp voice cut through the noise. "You," one of the commanders, a tall Sci-Fi with red markings across his body, sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. "You believe you can lead us. You, a foreigner who knows nothing of our ways. You will never command the Hive." Superman didn't flinch, even as every eye in the room turned to him. He understood the challenge. It wasn't just his strength or his status as a protector that was being questioned. It was his right to lead. "I don't seek to command," he said calmly, meeting the commander's gaze with unwavering determination. "But if the future of your people is at stake, I will do whatever it takes to ensure that future doesn't end in bloodshed. Together, we fight." The commander sneered but said nothing more. Zalsara, however, looked at Superman with a deeper understanding, her wings flaring slightly. "The rebellion is not just about you, Protector," she said. "It's about our very way of life. These rebels will not be swayed by force alone. You must prove that you understand what the Serafi truly need, that they are not just subjects to be ruled, but partners in a shared future." Superman nodded slowly. This was more than a war of weapons. It was a war for the hearts and minds of an entire species, and to win it, he would have to show them that unity, not division, was the key to their survival. He turned to the commander who had challenged him earlier. "If you want peace, you must first learn to listen," he said. "And I'm willing to listen to you. All of you." For a long moment, the room was silent. The commander's glare softened just a fraction, but the tension was still thick in the air. "Then let's see if you can convince them," Zalsara said, her voice carrying the weight of leadership. "For now, the future of the hive is in your hands." "They're not just fighting us," she said, her voice low, almost pained. "They're fighting for their own vision of what we should be. If we lose now, it's not just the hive that falls, it's everything we've built." Superman nodded, feeling the gravity of her words. He had come here to protect them, to fight for a future that united Earth and Serafi. But the stakes were higher now. This was about more than just peace. It was about finding a way to bridge the gap between two worlds, two cultures that could either destroy each other or rise together. "We won't lose," Superman said, his voice steady. "I'm not letting them tear this apart." But the words felt hollow, even to him. How could he fight for peace when every blow he struck seemed to deepen the divide? He was an outsider, an uninvited force in a war he hadn't fully understood until it was too late. Zalsara's eyes softened for a moment. "You have come far, human. I've seen it. But this battle will test you in ways you haven't imagined. The Serafi will only follow you if they believe in you, not just as a warrior, but as a leader." Superman clenched his fists, feeling the weight of her words. Leadership was something he had always struggled with. He had been a soldier, a protector, but never a ruler. Never someone who could unite an entire people under a single cause. The sound of an explosion rattled the citadel, snapping him out of his thoughts. The rebels had breached the outer defenses. The time for speeches was over. It was time to act. "Let's go," Superman said, turning to Zalsara. "We'll stop them together." Zalsara's wings unfurled, and she nodded, the quiet strength in her gaze settling Superman's nerves. He wasn't in this alone. Not anymore. They descended into the heart of the hive, where the battle raged on. Serafi soldiers fought with ferocity, but the rebels were relentless. Superman could feel the energy crackling in the air as he charged into the fray, his fists a blur of motion. He slammed into the first rebel with a powerful punch, sending them crashing into a nearby wall. Another came at him, their weapon raised, but he dodged, grabbing their arm and twisting it, disarming them with a single, swift movement. But as much as he tried to subdue the rebels with non-lethal force, it became clear that brute strength wasn't going to solve this. Each rebel he faced was a symptom of something deeper, something that had been festering for generations. Zalsara moved through the battlefield with the grace of her people, her strikes precise, her wings cutting through the air like blades. But even she couldn't stop the growing tide of dissent. The hive's heart was shaking, its very foundations threatening to crumble under the weight of its divisions. Superman paused, taking in the scene. Amid the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows. Commander Kaller, the same Serafi who had challenged him in the command room. His face was grim, but there was something else there, something that spoke of pain and betrayal. "You don't understand," Kaller shouted, his voice carrying over the battlefield. "This is not your fight, human. This is our fight. You are nothing but a distraction, a symbol of everything we've lost. Superman stepped forward, meeting Caller's gaze. I understand more than you think, he said, his voice unwavering. I've seen what happens when people refuse to work together. I've seen what happens when we let our differences tear us apart. And I'm not letting that happen here. Caller hesitated, and for a brief moment, Superman saw a flicker of doubt in the rebel leader's eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the hard resolve of someone who had already made their choice. You're wrong, Caller said, his voice low. You'll never lead us. Superman stood tall, unshaken. I don't need to lead you. I just need you to see what we could become if we fight together. The air around them seemed to pause, as if the entire battlefield held its breath. His old Sora hovered behind Superman, watching the exchange with an intensity that mirrored his own. You have a choice, Superman continued, his voice carrying the weight of everything he had fought for. We can keep fighting until everything we've built is destroyed, or we can find a way to build something stronger, together. The silence stretched on for a moment longer, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, slowly, Caller's shoulders slumped. The fight had left him, and in his eyes, Superman saw the beginning of a change, small, but undeniable. We'll talk, Caller finally said, his voice softening. Maybe you're right. Superman nodded, relief washing over him. This wasn't over, not yet, but the first steps toward peace had been taken. And for the first time since arriving on the Hive World, Superman truly believed that they could build something greater than the sum of their parts. That unity wasn't just a dream, it was possible.